Hollow Knight is a game I shouldn't have enjoyed. I'm horrendous at everything the genre needs from a player. Platforming in boss battles, timing, focusing on multiple things at once, precise movement, I've got a horrendous memory, hate excessive backtracking, and Metroidvanias are all of that on juice. Hollow Knight is very hard, but from when I dropped in with no one telling me who I was or what to do or even what was going on, all I had was this really wholesome dude who was really homely and a well to jump down. But apparently that was all I needed, because at the end of it, I felt like it was my life's goal to stop the radiance. To give you guys an idea, I'm so bad at platforming. On my first playthrough of Doom 2016, I played an ultra violence because I'm good at those sorts of games, and I still died more on the platforming bits than to the enemies and bosses. And to make matters worse, my 11-year-old brother who plays Fortnite and Minecraft is better at the game than I am. And I think that's an important thing to consider, because it sucks to suck, and I always come into these games with a heavy negative bias. I've played a lot of platformers and a few Metroidvanias over the last few years, and none of them have compelled me enough to play them for more than 30 minutes. And I know it's not my favourite genre, but one of my personal beliefs as a game designer is that genre, or even the medium itself, is just a skin really. Or just a method to communicate what the writer wants to convey to the user, whether it's a story, an experience, or just a feeling in general. People obviously prefer certain genres, mainly because they give that same feeling that that person likes. I personally will play most zombie games out there, especially if they're multiplayer, because I love the experience and they usually have cool characters, lore, and stories. But at the same time, I think a great game transcends genre, and it's more about what they do for the player. On the platforming side of it, I loved Sonic, Mario, and Alex the Kid, and I also really enjoyed playing Castlevania and Metroid as a child. Although I never owned it or even thought of finishing the games, I just really enjoyed them. But as an adult, as I've said, I've tried playing a lot of modern ones, and I just don't find them fun or couldn't be bothered to finish them. So I really wanted to find out if I could enjoy a game I was terrible at as an adult, like I did before, and Hollow Knight was pretty much my last try. So let me introduce myself. My name's Ibraheem Mustafa. If you haven't watched any of my videos before, I'm an aspiring indie dev and want to celebrate great games and what they actually do in their design. This video is the start of a series that I'll be doing on games that I think are the perfect game for their purpose. So if you enjoy this video, please like it, subscribe if you think that this is your sort of thing, and yeah, tell me what you think when you're done with the video. So the main things I think that set this apart are the immersive design and what Team Cherry does to cater to both people like me and people who are actually competent or good at the game and love the challenge, and also how these two factors make Hollow Knight a super emotional and rewarding experience. The combat is super simple, and the movement feels so smooth and natural so that scrubs like me can play it, but it allows for skilled players to achieve a higher level of mastery in boss fights and platforming and all sorts of other challenges. It's the same David vs Goliath formula the older Monster Hunter games, Dark Souls, Metroid and Castlevania games used. You're given a simple set of attacks, a low amount of health compared to your enemies, and are much less physically capable than them. Everything you get is completely earned or found using your own initiative and not given to you for convenience because you need it. The games are very hard because of this, but the enemy AI is very simple and telegraphs really well. So it's not about spamming combos and special attacks, it's about learning the strengths and limitations of your abilities, trying to find ways to improve that, mastering your own personal playstyle, and learning the capabilities of your enemies. Even the hardest bosses in Hollow Knight are made to be simple, with a few attacks that are well telegraphed through very distinct animations and sounds. They also fit very well with their physical appearance, environment and personalities. It's very similar to how I remember the Castlevania games to be like. I couldn't do anything, but my cousin completed one of the games going flawless against all the bosses, and this was as children, so they were tough but designed to be beatable by pretty much anybody if they put the effort into actually understanding and learning them, which is what all good games do regardless of the genre. And just to prove how good it is, I'm spending half of my net worth to buy that cousin a copy because I know he'll like it and he needs to play it. Hollow Knight really gives you every single thing you need to defeat the bosses. Great telegraphing for the actions, times bosses stagger so you can heal. All you need to do is learn their attacks, be patient, that is the main thing I've learned. Learn their movement patterns, when you're safe to attack, and figure out how to deal with them from there. I also mentioned this about Hollow Knight in my video on AI design in games. It shows the player the movement patterns before using it to challenge them. They start off with simple problems that they face, and as they get deeper into it, the challenge becomes harder and more complex, but the challenge never becomes anything completely different, it just evolves. And in these games, the bosses will have improved variations of the attacks of bosses before them and the mobs leading up to them. And this creates this feeling that no matter how impossible it seems to beat the boss, because they are super hard, that you can actually beat them because you have already technically beat them and experienced what they do, just not in that way yet. And to add to that, the platforming challenges give the player an opportunity to practice with new abilities that they've probably just gotten, or master the movement in general, especially with how tight your movement needs to be to actually complete them. And for players like me who maybe aren't used to the genre and don't pick up as well, it actually taught me what I could do a few times. Like this bit where I have to down pogo off these centipedes to get to the top. I never knew you could do that. It's super helpful in the arena and a lot of boss fights, and I genuinely never would have learned this otherwise. And for someone who finds simple platforming frustrating, I absolutely loved the platforming areas like the White Palace, because they were more like a puzzle the devs have built, so that those who think outside the box and have mastered the mechanics have a challenge worth their time. You can actually skip bits of it if you're good or smart enough, or you can use the pins tactically. I use the honey and grub song pins to not die because I'm absolutely terrible at it and just didn't want to have to restart. Doing it made me remember missing simple jumps at the start and made me appreciate how much better I'd gotten. The next thing I absolutely love is the sense of freedom the game gives, and how everything in Hollow Knight feels completely optional. The non-linear world design makes it a very personal experience. I was amazed when I saw in Mithymu's playthrough, which I recommend you watch because it's amazing, he's really good at the game. He fought one of the end game bosses in the 5th episode of his playthrough with no upgrades, and he somehow died a lot less times than I did. You can go to almost anywhere without fighting anyone too hard, and at the same time they have areas across the map, even the starting area, that you're just unable to access without certain powers you get through exploring and fighting bosses. And they build this amazing open world for you to explore and experience. It gives you this real feeling of autonomy, like you get playing games like GTA, because it doesn't pander to you or force you to do anything, and that in a way makes me actually want to find and do everything, if they do it right at least, and Hollow Knight does exactly that. When I played a lot of older games, it was just exploring the game, trying everything out, because there was always a reason for stuff to be there, and they didn't really mind if you didn't find it, so it was fun looking for everything. There's just something about a game where you can explore almost everywhere without having to jump through some hoops or trigger any events, and I found myself constantly finding new areas I hadn't been in. I was really surprised when I opened up the map at the end and found that I'd never even explored a whole area and was missing a few from ones I thought I had completely explored. And then I got the grub map and found another whole area I was missing, and that there was even more in areas I thought I'd completely explored again. It really rewards people who are invested, a bit more adventurous, and like to challenge themselves. And on top of that, it's helpful with the bosses getting further and making exploration easier, especially with the abilities and upgrades you'll find. Even the grubs you find, which I thought were just Easter eggs like in other games, you know, like the action figures in Doom, they're actually a vital part of an important upgrade, and at the same time they're completely optional to you, just like pretty much everything else in the game, including a majority of the bosses and surprisingly huge areas of the game. It was such an awesome experience being able to look up my map and see I couldn't do this before. Maybe I can do it now with the crystal dash, or just me delivering grubs, and that gives me loads of money and a payload to upgrade my nail. And it shocked me when I found out that other players had finished the game without the shade cloak, Gizma's tear, or even less. When I fought the Radiance, I just couldn't beat it after hours and hours of trying, but I felt like I needed to because I wanted a satisfying ending for the characters I'd come to love. So I found out that I was somehow missing the upgraded upward attack and the lifeblood core, which really helped me since I suck and tend to panic and get hit a lot. This level of autonomy makes it feel like you're challenging yourself instead of the game doing it, which I think is important for immersion, since it feels like you've found it, you've broke that wall to find the secret area, you've died this many times to learn and beat this boss that seemed impossible at first. In general, it's this feeling that I've chosen to do something and challenge myself instead of it being handed to me because I'm at a certain point. I just want to say I absolutely love the charm system, which adds to that personalized experience. because it lets people optimize for their own unique style of play instead of using some meta. Personally, I'm a very strategic person, but when it's happening I'm super aggressive, so I like to plan carefully for each one. My personal favourites are the nail lengthening ones, the extra life, wayward compass, if you know you know, that one that hits out when you get hit. And because I'm not great, the companion pins really helped for some of the boss fights I couldn't do, because I could just focus on dodging and let them do the damage for me. It's also another huge reason to explore the world, interact with people around the place, and keep my eyes open for breakable walls, because it's actually worth doing. All in all, Hollow Knight has a very you get out what you put in sort of feel, and I think a lot more games need to follow that, because I find myself doing a lot for very little a lot of the time. Anyone who's played the game will tell you how great the soundtrack is, but one thing I actually love, which I feel isn't spoken about enough, is the moment to moment interactions. It's a huge part of making an immersive game, because immersion needs to last throughout the game, not just in times of tension, and it's an aspect so important to our experience as a player that we can't actually control at all. Good designers add little bits here and there to make us feel like we exist in that world, and through that we'll actually feel that the world exists. That can be through making us feel something for things in it, like my deep hatred for the aspids, realistic animations, environments that tell a story and also feel alive or real, or just having us touch something and the game giving us some visual and audible feedback. It's a great way for designers to give us a confirmation of existence in that world. And I know that sounds quite weird, but two great examples of this are one, Stardew Valley. I think the little sounds really add to the experience, especially with you walking over stuff and you hitting trees. It just adds to it and makes it a really lovely experience.
Oi, get your hands off my wood.
Ivy, you want to rephrase that sentence, please?
And in shooting games, the hit markers you get as feedback for hitting somebody and the sounds that those make are so rewarding to the player, especially when you get a headshot. I'm actually working on a video on how Valve did that in their games, because they did it amazingly. But anyway, back to the point. Something that really impressed me was that I never really got bored, even when I was backtracking at the end and there was nothing going on, and I did that a lot. Two of the reasons for that was obviously because the stag beetle was so good and the tram as well, and just the fact that the game never really made me go back or told me. It was just for my own purpose and I actually wanted to. But even with that, I don't think it would have been able to keep me as immersed without the little things in the environment that you could hit and break, and how every environment had a different type of thing, like crystals, bubbles to foliage, and then the little enemies as well, like the little beetles or the jellyfish, and I'd just find myself like hitting them and breaking them while I walked past, and it was really cool, especially seeing stuff break as I crystal dashed through them. All the areas in Hollow Knight added to the immersion and story in their own extremely unique ways because of how alive and realistic the environments felt. Like all the secret plants popping up in Green Path along with the little bush dude and the bush chargers. My personal favourite was Fog Canyon. I got this deep sea trench vibe from it. Like I wasn't supposed to be there with all these creatures that completely ignored me, like the big jellyfish, but were deadly if I dared to mess with them. Completely the opposite of Deep Nest, where things were popping out of everywhere trying to eat me. Team Cherry has just built everything in Hollow Knight to communicate the story of the world, and more important, make you feel the way they want you to. Hollow Knight is just this beautiful immersive experience that'll make you laugh, depress you, and throws challenge after challenge at you. The atmosphere and everything going on has this real hostile and melancholic feel to it, but then you have the characters and all of them have such unique and wonderful personalities. And you'll just be exploring and they'll show up in the most random and unexpected places, willing to have a chat with you. They're just kind of like a candle in the dark and cruel world of Hollow Knight, and they just make all the suffering I've had to go through worth it. And they're not just there for relief, they have their own baggage that they carry, which you'll find out if you play it. The story itself has a lot of depth, and I didn't feel like there were any plot holes either. And to finish it off, I really wanted to talk about a bit that really impacted me. So I'm not going to explain everything because I don't want to give out spoilers, but basically there's this bit where you go up a tower and you see a telescope, and you look into the telescope and you just see this derelict city with stuff raining down and a bit of stuff flying about, and it just gave me this really sad, depressed feeling, especially after everything I'd seen in the game. It kind of all added up, and it's hard to describe, but it gave me very similar vibes to COD 4 at the Chernobyl bit.
50,000 people used to live here. Now it's a ghost town.
but I'd actually say it's much more impactful because of the rest of the game adding to this feeling and sending that same sort of note, and also because we're not only seeing the aftermath, we're also seeing it through the eyes of someone who loved the place so much. Just thinking of them watching it happily while the kingdom was prosperous and then having to watch it slowly transform into its current state is so depressing, but it made my actions later on feel so much more meaningful. All of these moments happen so often throughout the game, and I put so much time and effort into getting the best ending out of it for all these guys because of this. So if you haven't tried it, buy Hollow Knight. If you know somebody who you think will enjoy it, buy it for them. And let's look forward to Hollow Knight Silksong. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If it's your kind of content, I'd appreciate if you stuck around and subscribed. Also, if you want to support me on Patreon so I can spend more time and money on making videos on game design and games themselves, I'd appreciate it. And yeah, hope you enjoyed the video. Bye.